The constant hum of the equipment in the state-of-the-art operating room was the only sound that dared break the almost reverent silence. Dr. Kael Silva, scalpel in hand, felt the weight not only of the tool, but of a life that rested on his expertise. His eyes, accustomed to unraveling the mysteries of the human body, were fixed on the monitor, where the patient's vital signs oscillated in a tenuous dance between life and death. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple, oblivious to the controlled temperature of the sterile environment. The head nurse, Clara's voice, sounded like a distant echo, almost a ghostly whisper. "Doctor, we're ready for the incision." But Kael wasn't ready. Not yet. His mind was dragging him away from that bright future, back to the dusty, noisy past of his childhood, where the smell of antiseptic was replaced by the pungent aroma of wet earth and hope. Hesitation, no matter how slight, was a luxury he couldn't afford. That man's life depended on his precision, his coolness, his ability to separate the personal from the professional. However, the images that invaded his mind were too powerful to ignore, a whirlwind of memories that transported him to a time and place where life was a daily struggle and death a constant presence. He was just a boy, maybe 12, with perpetually scraped knees and large, curious eyes that absorbed every detail of the world around him. His curly hair, trimmed by his mother with kitchen scissors, framed a face that, even in childhood, carried an unusual seriousness, a depth that went beyond his youth. His world was Beco da Esperanza, a cluster of exposed brick houses with asbestos roofs nestled on the outskirts of an indifferent metropolis. It wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a universe, unto itself, with its own rules, its own language, its own heroes and villains. There, the smell of home-cooked food, slowly cooking beans, the aroma of cilantro and garlic, mingled with that of open sewers, a constant reminder of life's duality. Children's laughter echoed alongside the distant sound of sirens, which often brought not help, but more trouble. It was a place of resilience, where solidarity was a currency more valuable than money, of strong bonds formed in adversity, but also of a poverty that eroded dignity and cut short dreams, transforming them into mere whispers in the wind. In Biko, life was a constant dance between fleeting joy and daily struggle, where each day was a victory and each night a prayer for a better tomorrow. The dirt streets, which turned to mud on rainy days, were the stage for life as it unfolded. Children played ball with tied-up rags, women chatted in doorways while mending clothes or peeling vegetables, and the sound of the radio, always tuned to some samba or foro station, filled the air. Kael's house, like the others, was small but full of life. The bare brick walls held stories of laughter and tears, of hopes and disappointments. The single room served as living room, bedroom and kitchen, and privacy was an unknown luxury. But there, between the pot bubbling on the wood-burning stove and the mattress on the floor, Kael found the warmth and security of his family. Kael loved that place, and he loved his family even more. His mother, Donna Lucia, was the embodiment of strength and faith. Her eyes, which had seen so much pain and suffering, still held a gleam of unwavering hope. She was the matriarch, the guardian of the family, who with her calloused hands and enormous heart transformed the little into much. Kael remembered the stories she told at the foot of his bed, tales of resilience and courage that lulled him to sleep and inspired him to dream. Her smile, though rare, was a ray of sunshine that dispelled any cloud of sadness. She was the voice of reason and tenderness, the moral compass that guided him. His father, Jorge, a bricklayer who would return home with an aching back and rough hands from carrying cement, but always with a tired smile and a tight hug for his children. He was a man of few words, but his eyes conveyed deep love and constant concern for his offspring's future. He taught Kael the importance of building on solid foundations, a lesson the boy would apply not only in life, but also in his studies. And there was Leah, his little sister, a 5-year-old ray of sunshine, with tight curls like springs and a smile that disarmed any sadness, capable of illuminating the darkest corners. Of the Beko, Leah was the joy of the house, the promise of a brighter future, a constant reminder of the innocence and beauty that still existed in their world. Kael remembered Leah running barefoot down the dirt road, her arms outstretched as if to fly, her cries of joy echoing, and he, always behind, a silent protector, ensuring that no stumble, no sharp stone, no unexpected danger reached her. He was her guardian, her confidant, her best friend. They shared secrets under the thin blanket, by the flickering light of a candle, dreaming of a future that seemed as distant as the stars they could barely see through the city's light pollution. Leah wanted to be a ballerina. Kael wanted to build rockets to take her to the moon. These were simple, pure dreams, allowed by the innocence of childhood, a refuge from the harsh reality that surrounded them. Leah's memory, vibrant and full of life, was a treasure Kael held deep within his soul, a constant reminder of what he had lost and what he fought to protect. The danger, however, came not from the street, nor from the gangs that occasionally terrorized the neighborhood, but from something invisible, insidious, that crept into their home without warning. It began with a persistent dry cough, which Leah tried to muffle with her little hand. Then came a fever that wouldn't subside, burning her delicate skin and leaving her prostrate on the makeshift bed. Donna Lucia and Seu Jorge tried everything, home remedies passed down from generation to generation, herbal teas, cold compresses, healers who whispered ancient prayers, but nothing seemed to work. With each day, Leah grew weaker, paler, her large, bright eyes losing focus, replaced by a feverish, distant glow. Kael felt a tightness in his chest, an icy fear he had never experienced. He held Leah's hand, trying to transmit his own strength, but felt the life drain from her like sand through his fingers. The house, once filled with laughter, was now filled with an oppressive silence, broken only by Leah's coughing and her parents' worried whispers. The air felt heavy, laden with an anguish that Kael, at his young age, could barely comprehend but felt deeply. With each labored sigh, Kael felt a piece of his own hope slip away. He remembered the desperate race to the nearest public hospital, a journey by crowded bus and on foot, with Leah wrapped in a blanket in her mother's arms. The endless wait in crowded hallways, the smell of disinfectant mixed with despair and sweat, the constant sound of coughs and moans, the cries of other children. He saw the disdainful looks of the staff, the bureaucracy that seemed to rise like an insurmountable wall for people like them. People without health insurance, without influence, without a voice. There's no room. Come back tomorrow. It's just a little flu, were the phrases that echoed, oblivious to the urgency of the situation, while Leah, growing weaker, clung to Kael's hand, her small fingers squeezing his with the last of her remaining strength. Every minute was torture, every look of contempt a knife wound. Kael felt helplessness eating away at him, anger bubbling in his chest. Why was it so difficult? Why was his sister's life worth so little to these people? Why did skin color and address determine who was entitled to health care and who was left to die? Injustice screamed in his chest, a pain sharper than any physical wound. He watched his parents, once so strong, now bowed under the weight of pain and humiliation. And the image of them, so helpless, etched itself into his soul. That day, more than the loss of Leah, was the loss of his innocence, the brutal revelation of an unequal and cruel world. The helplessness he felt in that cold corridor turned into a silent promise, an oath that would seal his fate. When they finally got treatment, after hours of pleading and humiliation, it was too late. The pneumonia had spread, and Leah's small body, already weakened by malnutrition and lack of adequate care, gave way. Kael felt his world crumble. His mother's convulsive cries, a sound he would never forget. His father's stunned silence, who seemed to have aged decades in just a few hours, and the immense void Leah left behind. He knelt beside the cold metal bed, holding his sister's limp hand, still warm but lifeless. Tears flowed uncontrollably, mingling with the promise welling up in his wounded soul. There, in that impersonal and cruel hospital, Kael made a silent oath, a pact with himself that would echo throughout his life. He would be a doctor. He would save lives. He would ensure that no other child, no other family would experience the pain and helplessness they were feeling. He would be the hope Leah never had, the voice for the voiceless, the hand that reached out to those most in need, the shield against indifference and prejudice. That moment, the loss of Leah, was not just a tragedy. It was the chrysalis of his transformation, the starting point for a journey that would defy all expectations, a journey toward justice and healing. The pain of loss solidified into an iron determination, an unshakable purpose that would guide every step of his life. The years that followed were a constant battle, a testament to Kael's unwavering determination. Grief over Leah's loss became a silent fuel, a flame that burned in his chest, illuminating his path and driving away the shadows of despair. He immersed himself in his studies with a ferocity that frightened even his teachers and classmates. While his friends played ball on the dirt road, flew colorful kites in the blue sky, or engaged in childish games, Kael pored over dusty old books, many of them found in public library trash bins or donated by more educated neighbors who recognized his brilliance. He devoured every word, every concept, every anatomical illustration, imagining himself one day in a spotless white coat, saving lives, relieving pain, healing wounds. He felt that every page turned, every concept understood, was a tribute to his sister, a way of keeping her memory alive and honoring his oath. His mind, once focused on childhood games, was now fertile ground for science, biology, chemistry, physics, everything that would bring him closer to his goal. He became a voracious reader, a tireless autodidact, absorbing knowledge like a sponge, building an intellectual arsenal for his future battle. The nights were short, the days filled with an insatiable thirst for knowledge, a relentless search for tools to rewrite his own destiny and that of his community. It wasn't easy. It was never easy for a black boy from Beco da Esperanza, with dark skin and curly hair, who carried the stigma of poverty and marginalization. At school, jokes about his skin color were constant, whispered in the hallways or spoken openly in class. The suspicious looks and sarcastic smiles, the low expectations that surrounded him like a dark cloud. Why all the studying, Kael? You'll end up in construction like your father, or selling candy at the traffic lights like so many others, some classmates would say, echoing the hidden prejudice and hopelessness that permeated society. Even some teachers, unaware of the depth of their own bias, treated him with a certain paternalism, as if his presence there were a concession, a favor, and not an inalienable right to education. Kael felt the sting of prejudice, but refused to retaliate. He knew his best response would be success, the proof that they were wrong, the demonstration that intelligence has no color or address. He learned to transform pain into strength, the ignorance of others into motivation. Every insult, every look of disdain only strengthened his resolve, cementing his conviction that he needed to go further to break through the invisible barriers that society tried to impose. With each mockery, he simply clutched his books to his chest, the certainty of his purpose stronger than any words. But Kael found a beacon amidst the darkness, a light that guided and propelled him. Donna Ellen, the science teacher, a woman with grey hair, always tied back in a tight bun, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, and a gaze that saw beyond appearances. She was the first to truly believe in him, to see the limitless potential behind that quiet, studious boy. Donna Ellen encouraged him. lent him books from her own private library, volumes Kael would never have access to otherwise, and spent extra hours after class explaining complex concepts of biology and chemistry, unraveling the mysteries of the human body. Kael, your potential is limitless. Don't let the ignorance of others define who you are. Your intelligence and your kindness are your greatest weapons, she said, and her words were a balm for the boy's wounded soul, a shield against the arrows of prejudice, a shot of encouragement that kept him going. She became his mentor, his confidant, his greatest supporter, a second mother who helped him navigate the turbulent waters of adolescence and prejudice. It was Donna Ellen who introduced him to the world of scholarship competitions, who made him believe that Colegio Elite was not an unattainable dream, but a goal to be achieved with effort and dedication. She saw in Kael not only a brilliant student, but a future leader, an agent of change for his community, a seed of hope planted in fertile soil. Life at home was also a constant challenge. Donna Lucia, her health weakened by hard work and sleepless nights, and Seu Jorge, who could barely support his family on his bricklayer's salary, which barely covered basic expenses. Kael, at 15, felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He began working at a street market, carrying crates of fruits and vegetables, cleaning dirty stalls, and shouting out offers to attract customers. He would wake before sunrise, with the rooster crowing in the neighboring yard, go to the market, then rush to school. And at night, exhausted, with his body aching and his mind weary, he still found the strength to study, often by the dim light of a lamp hanging from the ceiling, or by candlelight when the power went out, which was common in Beco da Esperanza. The nights were long, the days endless, but Kael didn't complain. He knew that each sacrifice was a step toward his dream, a step toward honoring Leah's memory, a step toward building a better future for his family. He saw the weariness in his parents' eyes, the effort they made for him, and this drove him even further. He was their hope, and he would not disappoint them. With each coin he earned at the market, he felt a mixture of pride and heaviness, knowing that this hard-earned money was essential for his family's survival, for keeping the flame of hope alive. The bullying by Ricardo and his friends became more aggressive and systematic. Ricardo, the son of a wealthy and influential businessman, saw in Kael an affront to his own superiority. He couldn't stand the idea of a boy from the favela standing out, competing with him. The verbal attacks escalated into shoving in the hallways and petty thefts of his school supplies. One day, Ricardo hid Kael's glasses, causing him to stumble and fall amid the mocking laughter of the others. Kael felt anger bubbling up, but he controlled himself. He knew a fight would be the end of his dreams, the perfect excuse to expel him from school. He needed to be smarter, more resilient, stronger. He learned to dodge attacks, to ignore provocations, to focus on his goal. But the pain of Ricardo's words and actions accumulated, an invisible wound he carried with him, a constant reminder of the barrier he needed to overcome. Each humiliation was a test, and Kael was determined to pass them all, to turn each obstacle into a stepping stone to his ascension. With each provocation, he only reinforced his conviction that he would prove the worth of his origins and his color. The announcement of the elite school scholarship competition was the light at the end of the tunnel. Kael knew this was his only chance to get into a good medical school. The competition required an innovative science project and impeccable writing. With Donna Ellen's help, Kael decided to create a low-cost water purifier, prototype using recycled materials. The idea was simple yet brilliant, a filtration system that could be replicated in impoverished communities like Beco da Esperanza, combating diseases caused by contaminated water. He remembered the muddy water Leah drank, the lack of basic sanitation, the indifference of public authorities. His project was more than science. It was a promise, a hope, a silent cry for justice. It was the materialization of his oath, proof that science could indeed change the reality of his people. He dedicated himself to every detail, every screw, every connection, with the passion of someone building a future, of someone who believes in transformation. With every weld, every adjustment, he saw the possibility of a better future materializing, not only for himself, but for everyone he loved. The project, dubbed Clean Water for the Beko, was the synthesis of his pain and his purpose. Kael worked tirelessly on the project, dedicating every free minute to it. Sleepless nights, sacrificed weekends. He assembled and disassembled the prototype dozens of times, testing every component, perfecting every detail. Hope shone in his eyes, a palpable hope for a different future. He saw the project as a bridge between Beco da Esperanza and the outside world, a way to bring dignity and health to his community. Donna Ellen helped him with the research, the calculations, and the writing of the report. She was his biggest fan, his biggest supporter, his most loyal ally. Together, they formed an unbeatable team, united by the purpose of transforming Kael's life and, by extension, that of his community. The approaching presentation date increased his anxiety, but also the certainty that he was on the right track. With every step, Kael felt the strength of his community pushing him forward, Leah's memory guiding him. He knew he was not alone on this journey, that it carried with it the dreams and hopes of many. The school's science room, once a place of boredom for many, it became their personal laboratory, their sanctuary of invention. On the morning of the exhibition, Kael arrived at school with his heart overflowing with anticipation. But the scene he encountered froze him. His project was in pieces, destroyed beyond recognition. The wires were cut, the filter was broken, the notes were torn and scattered across the floor, like confetti from a nightmare. Ricardo and his friends, with cynical smiles and looks of triumph, watched from afar, savoring the scene of despair. Kael's heart sank. Years of effort, sacrifice and dreams were reduced to rubble by pure malice, envy and racism. He considered giving up, abandoning everything, accepting the fate many had prophesied for him, the fate of a black boy from Beco da Esperanza, with no future, no hope. The tears he had held back for so long threatened to spill down his face, but he held them back. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The humiliation was profound, but the anger even more. So, he felt the bitter taste of injustice, the weight of prejudice that seemed intent on crushing him. That moment was a turning point, the final test of his resilience, the last straw that broke the camel's back and ignited a new flame of determination. Leah's image once again appeared in his mind, not as a ghost, but as a beacon, a reminder of his unwavering purpose. But then he remembered Leah, the oath he had made on his deathbed, and Donna Ellen's voice echoing in his mind. Kael, your potential is limitless. Don't let the ignorance of others define who you are. He took a deep breath, feeling the anger and pain transform into a cold, unwavering determination. No, he would not give up. He would not give Ricardo the satisfaction of seeing him fall. With the help of Donna Ellen, who mobilized some neighbors and colleagues who believed in Kael, they rebuilt the project in record time, working through the night, under the light of lanterns, and with the strength of unity. The community came together, each donating a little of what they had, a piece of wire, a PVC pipe, some glue, a piece of canvas. The solidarity of Beco da Esperanza manifested itself in its purest and most powerful form. The women of the neighborhood prepared coffee and sandwiches, the men helped repair the damaged parts, the children brought tools. It was the community embracing their son, their hope, their future. That act of sabotage, which should have destroyed him, ended up strengthening his bonds with the people who truly mattered, transforming an act of evil into a catalyst for unity and resilience. Kael felt the warmth of that unity, the strength that came from his people, and it renewed him, spurred him to fight even harder. Rebuilding the project wasn't just physical, It was a reconstruction of his own faith in humanity, a reminder of the power of collectivity. Kael's presentation was impeccable. He not only explained his project with clarity and passion, but also told the story behind it, the pain of his community, the search for solutions, the resilience of a people. The judges, moved and impressed, had no doubts. Kael won a full scholarship to elite college. The victory was a bittersweet mix of euphoria and sadness. He knew he would have to leave Beco da Esperanza, his family, his community, to follow his path. But it was a necessary sacrifice, a decisive step toward fulfilling the vow he had made, a step toward becoming the hope Leah never had. Donna Helene's hug, tight and full of pride, was the most precious recognition he could have received, confirmation that he was on the right path. Saying goodbye to his family was difficult, but his mother's eyes filled with tears and pride, and his father's silent wave gave him the strength he needed to leave. On the bus that took him away, Kael looked back at the flickering lights of the alley and promised himself that one day he would return to give back all he had received, to be the bridge between his world and the world he was about to conquer. This goodbye was not an end, but a new beginning, the promise of a triumphant return. The years flew by, transforming the boy from Beco da Esperanza into a determined and brilliant young man. Kael became a model student at elite school, where, despite still facing curious looks and some hidden prejudice, he proved his worth through his intelligence and dedication. He excelled in biology and chemistry classes, devouring medical textbooks, participating in science fairs and academic competitions. His presence at the school, once viewed with strangeness, became a source of pride for the institution. He was living proof that talent knows no color or address, that human capacity transcends social barriers. Then came medical school, an even more competitive and elitist environment. Kael felt like a fish out of water, an intruder in a world of privilege where many of his peers had never known scarcity. But he was undaunted. With every challenge, every obstacle, the image of Leah and the oath he had made on his deathbed drove him on. He stood out not only for his intelligence and ability to absorb knowledge, but for the empathy and humanity he brought to medicine. He saw each patient not just as a clinical case, but as a person, with their own story, their own fears, their own hopes. He became a respected surgeon with a reputation for steady hands, a sharp mind, and a compassionate heart. He had fulfilled his promise, saving countless lives, easing pain, and bringing hope where before there had been only despair. His journey was a living testament to the fact that determination and passion can overcome the most insurmountable barriers, and that true healing begins with compassion and extends far beyond the physical body. He learned to navigate the cold corridors of hospitals, transforming them into spaces of welcome and healing, always with Leah's memory as his guide. Each successful surgery was a small victory against the injustice that had taken his sister, a way of honoring her legacy. He became an example, a beacon for other young people in Beco da Esperanza, showing that the impossible was merely a matter of perspective, and that the future could be rewritten with perseverance and faith. With each diploma, each achievement, Kael felt he was one step closer to his ultimate goal, not just to heal, but to transform. And now he was there. In that modern surgical center, scalpel in hand, the memory of Leah and the oath echoing in his mind with an almost painful intensity, the hum of the machines, the smell of antiseptic, the cold light of the operating room. Everything seemed amplified. Clara, the nurse's voice, called to him again, this time with a more urgent tone. "Doctor, time is running out. We must act." Kael looked at the patient on the table, a middle-aged man with a swollen face disfigured by the trauma of a serious car accident. But even beneath the scars of pain and medical intervention, Kael recognized the features. The same aquiline nose, the same furrowed brow, the same mouth that had once uttered so many cruel words. It was Ricardo. The same Ricardo who had tried to sabotage her science project, who had mocked her skin color, her humble origins. The man who represented such a painful and humiliating part of her past, now lay unconscious, his life hanging by a thread in Kael's hands. Fate, with its cruel sense of humor, had placed the tormentor in the hands of the victim. The irony of the situation was almost unbearable, but Kael knew there was no room for personal emotions in that moment. A man's life was at stake, and his duty was clear, unquestionable. He was a doctor, and his mission was to save, not to judge, not to avenge. This was the final test of his oath, the proof that he had become the man Leah deserved him to be, a man of compassion and integrity above all else. A wave of conflicting emotions hit him with overwhelming force. Anger, resentment, the vivid memory of the humiliation, the helplessness he had felt that day at school. For a brief, almost imperceptible moment, Kael hesitated. Could he, a man who had dedicated his life to saving, allow revenge to cloud his judgment, let hatred dictate his actions? Could he fail the oath he made to Leah, the principles that guided him? The image of his sister, smiling and running barefoot, flashed in his mind, pure and innocent, a reminder of his true mission. No, he couldn't. He wasn't Ricardo. He was Kael, and Kael saved lives, regardless of the patient, regardless of their past. Life was sacred, and his oath was unbreakable. The medical ethics he so cherished, and which Donna Helene had taught him to value, spoke louder than any personal resentment. He was a doctor, and his duty was to heal, to restore, to preserve life. That moment of introspection lasted only a second, but it felt like an eternity, even between man and doctor, between personal pain and professional duty. The doctor won, and with him, the humanity Kael had cultivated within himself, the compassion that made him truly great. The decision, though difficult, was the easiest he had ever made, for it aligned with everything he believed in, with the essence of his being. With a deep sigh, Kael pushed aside the shadows of the past, the ghosts of pain and prejudice. His eyes focused once more on the monitor, on the patient, on the monumental task before him. His hands, steady and precise, began the incision. Every movement was calculated, every decision meticulously thought out, the fruit of years of study and practice, of sleepless nights, of countless sacrifices. He worked with an almost supernatural concentration, guided by the passion that had driven him since childhood, by Leah's memory, by the desire to make a difference. He felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but also the strength of all those who believed in him, his family, Donna Helene, his community. Hours passed, which seemed like an eternity. The surgery, complex and risky, was a resounding success. Kael had saved the life of Ricardo, the man who had once tried to destroy his dreams. The operating room, once a stage of tension, was now filled with silent relief, a collective sigh of triumph. Clara, the nurse, looked at Kael with admiration. He had proven, once again, that he was an exceptional doctor and an even greater human being, capable of transcending personal pain in the name of a greater good. The silence that followed the surgery was more eloquent than any applause, a testament to Kael's mastery and humanity, an echo of his victory over hatred, prejudice, and the limiting expectations of an unjust world. That day marked not only the saving of a life, but the consecration of an ideal. Days later, Ricardo, still weak but conscious and recovering, asked to see the surgeon who had saved him. There was genuine curiosity in his request, a need to understand who this man was, who, despite everything, had saved him. Kael entered the room and the two men's eyes met. There were no words of apology, no mention of the painful past, only a silence charged with a strange tension, a newfound respect, an unpayable debt. Ricardo, his voice hoarse and still weak, handed Kael an envelope. "Dr. Silva," he began, his voice choked. I I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life, and I know I didn't deserve it. Kael took the envelope curiously, feeling the weight of paper in his hands. Inside was a letter, short but powerful, accompanied by a legal document. The letter read, "Dr. Silva, what you did for me made me reflect. The past cannot be erased, but the future can be different. I hope this helps build the future you dream of for your community. May the hope. You represent flourish, where before there was only disillusionment." The document was an anonymous but substantial donation for the construction of a community clinic in Beco da Esperança, a modern clinic with state-of-the-art equipment that would provide quality medical care to the people Kael loved so much, the people Leah never had the chance to have. Ricardo, now a successful businessman, revealed that the incident with Kael had deeply affected him, and upon seeing what Kael had become, he decided to use his resources to repair, in his own way, the harm he had caused. It wasn't an explicit request for forgiveness, but an act of redemption, a silent acknowledgement of the impact of his choices. Kael looked at Ricardo, then at the envelope. It wasn't a request for forgiveness, nor an attempt at personal redemption. It was something deeper, more complex. It was a silent acknowledgement that Kael's actions, his perseverance, his unwavering humanity, had touched something in Ricardo's heart, awakening a long, dormant conscience. This man, who once represented prejudice and evil, was now the instrument for realizing a dream Kael had harbored since the loss of Leah. Kael's oath had not only saved a life but inspired change, a transformation that would benefit his entire community. He had become the hope Leah never had, and so much more. He had built a legacy, and Beco da Esperança would finally have its own light, its own chance at a healthier, more dignified future, thanks to the boy who refused to give up on his dream, even when the world seemed to conspire against him, proving that true healing sometimes transcends medicine and reaches the human soul. The clinic, named Clínica Leah Silva, became a beacon of hope, a place where compassion and science came together to serve those most in need, a silent testament to a boy's vow and a man's unexpected redemption. Kael now divided his time between the high-tech hospital and the clinic in Beco da Esperança, a consummate physician who healed bodies and souls, and who, above all, never forgot where he came from, carrying Leah's memory with him as a constant reminder of his purpose. He was living proof that even in the most adverse circumstances, the light of hope and determination can shine brighter than any darkness, and that true greatness lies in serving others, regardless of their past or origins. Kael's story was not just that of a doctor, but that of an unlikely hero who transformed pain into purpose and prejudice into a legacy of love and healing. And looking to the future, Kael knew the journey was just beginning, and that each life saved, each smile restored, was another step toward building a more just and humane world, a world worthy of Leah's dream, a world where medicine was a right, not a privilege. The clinic, with its clean corridors and scent of hope, was the beating heart of Beco, a place where children would no longer need to fear illness, and parents, helplessness. And Kael, the boy who once swore, was now the man who made it happen, a beacon of humanity in a world that so desperately needed it.